Shabbat Shalom. Many of the stories that are recounted in Sefer Bamidbar appear again at the beginning of Sefer Devarim. But whereas in Sefer Bamidbar, in this week's Parsha, Chukat, and last week's Parsha, and so on, we have basically the storyline, the narration of the events that occurred. In Sefer Devarim, we see the things from Moshe's perspective. Moshe, at the very end of his life, reflecting on the long journey that he and the people have gone on and trying to make sense of it all. And having these two different perspectives is very useful and important because we're interested not just in the actual, account of what transpired, but of course trying to get some meaning out of it, trying to understand what it was all about, what the divine plan was. And for something that's so elusive and maybe ultimately beyond human comprehension, it's very helpful to have the two perspectives, to see it from two different angles and maybe help us put things together. So in this video, I want to look at the incident at Mei Merivah. That's the incident in which Moshe Rabbeinu was told to take the mateh, the staff that he had used for all the miracles in Egypt, and go to the rock, but to speak to the rock. And the rock would send out water, water would come gushing out, and thereby the people who had been complaining about their thirst would have plenty of water to drink. Instead, Moshe Rabbeinu, in a fit of anger, in a temporary, momentary loss of self-control, struck the rock. And even though water did come gushing out, he was told that this was a fatal error on the part of him and Aaron, who was really standing with him but not an active participant. Yan asher lo hamantem bi laktisheni. They had failed. For that reason, they will not enter the land of Israel. They will die in the desert just as the generation that led out of Egypt will die in the desert. So in this video, I'd like to take a look at the two perspectives we have. The story is told in Chukat, and just a very short phrase, but critical phrase, that Moshe uses in Devarim in his recollection, and to try to make some sense of it, at least offer some pointers, some guidelines in the direction of the historiosophy, which I have been on my mind quite a bit, as I see that it seems to give a very good insight on the biblical stories and on the divine guidance of the Jews and of history. So, the story as it's recounted in Parashat Chukat is, as we all know, first incident, which somewhat ties into it, is that Miriam, Moshe's older sister, passes away. Immediately the people become to complain, a near riot, that they want water to drink. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron basically flee them to the entrance of Ol Moed. And then God tells Moshe to take the staff, a mateh. This is the staff that had played such a role in the miracles and in the 10 plagues in the Exodus of Egypt, but for 38 years had simply been sitting in the Mishkan unemployed, with not put to any use. And then pay attention to this. He's told to take the staff, but then go to the rock and speak to the rock. So we have a question here. Why does he need the staff if he's not going to use it? He's just going to speak to the rock. And then when he gets to the rock and has assembled all the people there, he has a fit of anger. He tells him, Shimu na hamorim. He speaks to them in a very angry, condescending tone and language. And then, instead of speaking to the rock, he hits the rock. And then, as I said already, he is told that this has been a fatal mistake, a great failure, and for this reason, neither he nor Aaron will be able to lead the Jews into the promised land. Well, in Devarim, we have really just one phrase that's important, but it's of critical importance. Moshe Rabbeinu, in the beginning of Parashat V'etchanan, tells us of his last desperate plea and prayer to Kadosh Baruch Hu to let him enter the promised land, and he's denied. And Moshe tells us that he knows the reason why he was denied. Vayitaber Hashem bi lema'anchem v'lo shama elai. God was angry with me lema'anchem v'lo shama elai. But commentators have pointed that this is a little difficult here, this lema'anchem, because lema'anchem in Hebrew means sort of on your behalf. It's something that looks to the future. It's something that has to do with in view of what is we expect to happen, or what is supposed to happen, or what we've planned to happen. You cannot enter the promised land. It's not looking back and giving it as a cause, which would be in Hebrew biglalchem, which in fact Moshe says earlier in Parashat Devarim, when he says that's again another reason why he couldn't enter the promised land. Story of the spies, which says biglalchem. But here it's lema'anchem, meaning, or hinting at least, that the reason that Moshe could not enter the land was not a reaction or punishment, or just a punishment for his failure at Beit Merivah, but that there was some reason where lechatchila, where Ab initio was clear in the divine plan anyway, that Moshe Rabbeinu could not enter the promised land. Now, what this may be, I don't want to get involved in that now. As far back as the Ralbag says that Moshe Rabbeinu, if Moshe Rabbeinu had led the Jews into the promised land, the conquest would have been swift and complete, just as when he defeated Sichon and Og, it was complete, total victory, and they simply annihilated the enemies. Whereas with Yoshua, it was a slow conquest and an incomplete conquest. This idea has been carried forth, and to some extremes in recent times, by the Gra, even by the Rav, Rabbi Soloveitchik, to say that had Moshe Rabbeinu entered the promised land with the Jews, he would have built the Beit HaMikdash, and the final Geula would have happened already, and there would never have been a destruction of the temples, no Chorban, no Galus. I don't know exactly how this is known, where this comes from, but that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is the very idea that Moshe Rabbeinu, in his reflection, says that this event occurred lema'anchem. There was a divine plan that required that Moshe Rabbeinu not enter the land. And let's go back now and see how this can help us to understand some of what happened at Beit Merivah. So let's just point out the salient facts for the point I'm trying to get across. First of all, we note that Moses was told to take the staff, the mateh, though there was no role for it in what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to talk. So why should he have the staff in his hand? 2, and here's the critical point, the great failure of Moshe in this event, as the Rambam tells us, was his anger. Eina nevuah shara el chacham gibor v'ashir. And someone who cannot control their anger is not worthy of prophecy, and someone even like Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the greatest of all prophets, if he has a momentary lapse and is angry, that can disrupt his prophecy. The famous story of Elisha, when the 3 kings came to him, and he saw the king of Israel who had killed all the prophets of God, and Elisha got angry. And then when he was asked to prophesy about the upcoming battle, he said, "Bring someone to play some music, and I can calm down, again, because when I'm so angry now and my blood is boiling, I can't prophesy." So put 2 and 2 together, or 2 and 2 together. Moshe Rabbeinu has a staff in his hand. He's angry, and this is somehow interfering with his prophecy, and maybe making him forget momentarily that he was supposed to talk to the rock, and hit it. And out of anger, he hits the rock. And this led to the incident. But this was the incident. But was this to be unexpected? I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu was now already, in some ways, stressed out by one incident after another of having this rebellious group of people. And these are not the freed slaves coming out of Egypt who you can, excuse and say, well, they were just, slaves with absolutely no self-identity and no self-respect. So don't expect them to act differently. This was a generation he raised in the desert. So Rav makes this point. These were his Talmidim. These were the generation that from birth, Moshe Rabbeinu had been their Rebbe, had been their educator. And they were acting the same way that their parents, the freed slaves, had. So he was stressed out, angry, and at the momentary lapse, apparently this interfered with his understanding of the prophecy, and instead of speaking to the rock, he hit it. But it could have been predicted. It was not a surprise any more than the spies giving their report was a surprise. So this gives the impression this was again a sort of a divine ruse. There was a divine plan, a divine decree that Moshe Rabbeinu was not supposed to enter the land with this group that he'd been leading for the past 38, 40 years. But not to enter the land is a punishment. And the punishment can only be meted out if there is a violation. And so there was a violation which was prepared in this way. He was given a staff and sent to a situation where the stressed out leader could be expected to get angry. And so this all comes to point to the historiosophy that I've been talking about recently. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu has his ways of running the world and getting the world where he wants it to go, all the while maintaining our free choice. Moshe Rabbeinu did not have to hit the rock. It was his free choice to do it. And all the while maintaining his divine justice. Moshe Rabbeinu was not denied for no reason at all to enter the land. He had committed a grave sin. He had been told by divine command to talk to the rock, and he hit the rock. So everything fits into place. But the way it does looks a little, it takes some thinking about. But this seems to be the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, runs the world and gets things where they're supposed to go. All the while, as I say, maintaining freedom of choice, and divine justice. And the only moral lesson, the only practical lesson, the only lesson from which we have to learn what to do remains that we have to make the correct free choice at every time. Just what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in store for us, no one, not the Rebbe, not anyone else knows. And we are not under any obligation or command to make the Gula come quicker or bring the Mashiach. What we are told to do is what the Torah tells us to do, Vasita Tova Yashar. And that's the one thing that we have to always do and keep in mind. And, as I say, Be'ezrat Hashem, things will work out the way Kodesh Baruch Hu had decided in pre-eternity. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.